Joint actions are movements that take place at a joint, and they're caused by muscles working as antagonistic pairs. And there's a few different joint actions that we need to learn. So first of all, we have flexion and extension. Flexion is the narrowing of an angle at a joint, and extension is the widening of an angle at a joint. So flexion, first of all, if we look at this image here, and if we think about specifically the knee joint, so this movement is taking place from a knee joint. As this person brings their leg up towards them here, behind them, the angle is narrowing here at the knee joint. So therefore, flexion is occurring. If they were to bring this leg and this foot back down to the ground, the angle would be widening at the knee joint and extension would be occurring. If you were to perform a bicep curl, if you were to lift a dumbbell towards you, then the elbow joints would be where that movement action is taking place, and it would be flexion because the angle is narrowing. If you were then to move that dumbbell back towards the floor, your elbow would straighten out, and this would be extension occurring. The second set is abduction and adduction. Abduction means to take away, and that's exactly what it is in this form. Abduction is when you take away from the midline of the body. So adduction and abduction can happen at the shoulder and also the hip. In this image here, we can see that this person has taken their arm away from the midline of the body. So therefore is abduction. As you then bring your arm back towards you, adduction has occurred. Rotation can happen at ball and socket joints, so it can happen at the shoulder joint and the hip joint, and it is any action that is rotating or turning. The final set of joint actions is dorsiflexion and plantar flexion. This happens at the ankle joint only. Dorsiflexion is when you lift your toes up towards your shin, so the angle is basically narrowed at the ankle, and it's dorsiflexion. And then plantar flexion is when you push your toes down into the floor, and the angle is basically widened at the ankle joint. So a good way to remember this is planting your toes on the floor is plantar flexion. So if you go up onto your toes, it is plantar flexion. We'll look at each in a little bit more detail then, because we need to be able to talk about the muscles used in pairs as well as sporting examples. So if we think first of all then, the darts player here, as he releases the dart, his elbow is straightening, and therefore extension is occurring at the elbow joint. This action is caused by the tricep muscle. So the tricep muscle at the back of the upper arm is the muscle that's contracting, and that is known as the agonist muscle. So a muscle that contracts is known as the agonist muscle. The muscle relaxing as this action takes place, so as he releases that dart and straightens his arm, the bicep is relaxing, and that is known as the antagonist muscle. If we look at the second one, so we'll concentrate on the knee joint here. So as the weightlifter goes into her final position now, that is extension at the knee joint because it's straightening and widening the angle at the joint. So again, as she goes into it now, that is extension at the knee joint. That is caused by the quadriceps contracting. So the quadriceps are the agonist, and at the same time, the hamstrings are relaxing, so they are the antagonist. Abduction and adduction. So a good example for this one from sport is in tennis as you play a forehand shot. So you can see Roger Federer here. He's moving that arm from the shoulder joint towards him. So adduction is taking place. He uses abduction to prepare the shot and adduction to play that forehand shot. The muscle contracting to cause the adduction as he plays the shot are the pectorals and the muscle working, relaxing at the time are the deltoid. It's a deltoid muscle. So the deltoid and the pectorals work as an antagonistic pair. Plantar flexion and dorsiflexion. So we can see a hurdler here, and I want you to concentrate on their lead foot as they come over the hurdle. So they're actually using dorsiflexion as that lead foot comes over the hurdle, and they're pointing their toes just a little bit closer to their shin. And then as he comes back down onto his foot, as it lands again, he would be using plantar flexion as he comes down onto his toes. As he's coming up and over the hurdle, and he straightens from the ankle, and dorsiflexion occurs, the muscle contracting, so the agonist muscle is the tibialis anterior, and the muscle relaxing is the gastrocnemius. So the tibialis anterior and the gastrocnemius work together. Rotation then, a good example of rotation is in cricket. It's one of those sports where there is the ball and socket joint of the shoulder is very important as you're bowling the ball. So there's clear rotation and turning as there's 360-degree movement from the shoulder. It's a bit more difficult to talk about antagonistic pairs for rotation, but what we would say is that the deltoid and the pectorals are both involved with that movement at different stages throughout the rotation. So here then, we've got a table showing each of the joint actions, so the actions available at each joint. So the 3 hinge joints and the 2 ball and socket joints, and then we can see all of the muscle actions available. The agonist, so the muscle contracting for each muscle action, and the muscle relaxing, the antagonist for each muscle action. So it's really important that you sort of revise and learn this table. You know the agonist, you know the antagonist, so that you're ready to answer exam questions on this topic, and also to be able to give a sporting example for everything in this table. The final thing we'll look at then is just some static images that you could get given in an exam. So you could get asked, for example, the high jumper here, you could get asked about the joint action taking place at the ankle. So we could clearly see then that the toes are pointing into the ground on takeoff. So we know that plantar flexion is taking place at the ankle. And then we can say that the muscle contracting is the gastrocnemius, and the muscle relaxing is the tibialis anterior. You might get asked in this image about the action at the hip joint. So a little bit difficult, that one, but if your legs are straight out in front of you, like Jessica Ennis here, then the angle has been narrowed at the hips because your stomach is closer to your thigh. So the angle's been narrowed. The muscle causing that, so the agonist muscle, is the hip flexors, and the muscle relaxing, the antagonist muscle, is the gluteals. The final one then is a bicep curl, and as we can see here at the elbow joint, there has been a narrowing of the angle, so therefore flexion has taken place. The muscle causing this and the agonist muscle is obviously the bicep, and the muscle relaxing the antagonist is the tricep muscle.